the problem that most people that are like tradies and builders that are stuck at around that $1 million or $2 million mark is they're obsessed with being on the tools, and they enjoy that side of it, and they've got that pride in that actually I'm a really good tradie or builder, and they can't get out of that mindset shift of me being an awesome tradie. So that's the first thing that's got to happen. Is if you are going to scale to 10 million, you've actually got to see yourself as an entrepreneur and as someone who's actually going to be a business builder rather than someone who's exceptional on the tools. Say, well, let's just find people that are really good at that stuff so I can stay on the tools. You wouldn't have a profitable business. You won't make any money. You need to decide, are you going to be the visionary and drive it, or are you happy to just have a job and work on the tools? If someone was going into this thinking, I can just hire everyone else so I can stay on the tools, I don't know anyone that's built a business like that successfully.
Greg Wilkes is a construction industry expert, business owner, and strategist who's been through the highs and lows of building multi-million-pound companies.
Today, he helps construction businesses grow profitably, reduce stress, and build better work-life balance.
Greg, welcome to the Sideshed podcast.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Mate, we're here today to talk about the difference between a $1 million business and a $10 million trade business. Before we jump into that, do you want to give us a bit of a background as to your story and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so Greg Wilkes, I founded the company called Develop Coaching. So we coach businesses how to scale basically from 1 to 10 mil and beyond. And yeah, I've been a builder myself back in the UK. So experienced all the fun and games and the pain of a business going wrong. And when it goes right, it can be extremely lucrative, but it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. So yeah, I've been there and done it and got the t-shirt.
So is a big part of the conversation today going to be around like system development and like how to essentially scale what works?
Yeah, that and the mindset shifts that have to take place, because sometimes you can give everyone the roadmap and the systems, but if the mindset is not there, it can be a little bit of a struggle. So yeah, it will mainly be around systemization, but it's really looking at what the key differences are between the two different builders, because it's very different.
So where do you want to start with that? Because I guess a lot of, in my experience anyway, a lot of like smaller businesses will get to where they've, that $1 million mark. I mean, especially for like a builder, for example. I mean, $1 million, turnover for a builder is like one job, so it's not like a huge accomplishment. And for the better part, they can kind of do the majority of things themselves, with some subbies. But like once you start scaling, you sort of have these other dependencies on things like team and staff and, so on and so forth. So,
I think where to start is probably what is the difference between the two, and why is there a difference? There's a great book, and I'm sure you probably read it, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and it just talks about that difference, doesn't it, between like what's the difference between a technician and a CEO of a business. And I think that's really where it begins. I think the problem that most people that are like tradies and builders that are stuck at around that $1 million or $2 million mark is that they're obsessed with being on the tools, and they enjoy that side of it, and they've got that pride in that actually I'm a really good tradie or builder, and they can't get out of that mindset shift of me being an awesome tradie. So that's the first thing that's got to happen. Is if you are going to scale to 10 million, you've actually got to see yourself as an entrepreneur and as someone who's actually going to be a business builder rather than someone who's exceptional on the tools. And I think most of it for most people that want to scale to that level, that they recognize that actually the key is in leverage. And if you're on the tools, you're limited, aren't you, of how much output you've actually got. Whereas actually, if you're a $10 million builder or tradie, you're leveraging everything else. You're leveraging systems, you're leveraging people, you're leveraging your brand. So when you understand leverage and how that works, then you've got the ability to actually scale to a much better degree.
It's funny, kind of a timely conversation, because yesterday I was talking with a client of ours who is, like a relatively small business, like sort of does $1 million a year, sort of in the plumbing space from the Northern Beaches where you are. But this whole conversation was like, oh, we're going to cancel this service with you guys because like we're not getting like enough revenue. And I was saying, okay, well, what is enough revenue? Like what sort of results are we talking about? He goes, more profit. And I was like, net profit or gross profit? He said, no, net. I'm only interested in net profit. I'm actually going to do a separate, some content on this, because it's like, it's so, like such a common thing where people think, well, okay, well, like what I have a huge net profit, I'm crushing it, not understanding they probably have more of a job than a business.
Yeah.
And in this example, I'm saying to him, okay, well, what's a healthy net profit then? Like 15%, whatever. He goes, no, like 45%. And I'm like, okay, this tells me two things. First of all, you have no staff. Second of all, you're not investing in anything to help you grow. And for better or worse, mind you, like if that's what you want to do and it's a cash cow and you want to keep it like that, that's fine. But don't think you can just go and, build a business, like a proper business, with marketing and lead generation and client acquisition and staff and all that kind of stuff, with net profit margins of 45%. Like it's just insane.
No.
So I think there's a lot of ignorance out there. And I think as well, like, the common, misconception that I see when people sort of decide, and this is truthfully when they come to us as an agency, they've sort of expelled that, maxed out their whole, word of mouth referral dynamic, and they want to be able to create something a little bit more structured, systemized, predictable, so they can forecast things like growth and whatever it might be, recruitment. That's like a big conversation at the beginning. It's like you need to make sure looking forward, if you want to adopt this model, you do have allocations built in for necessary expenses and costs and, things like that, because you've never had to consider this before, but you sure as hell going to have to looking forward.
You've got to be willing to invest, haven't you? I mean, it's I've got exactly the same. Got a client actually from Australia that come in massive net profit margins, but on the verge of burnout. And you think, well, what's the point? If you're doing everything yourself, what are we actually trying to build here? So people often say, oh yeah, it's all about the net profit, but really, what we want is a great lifestyle, don't we? We want more time, and we want to earn an absolute fortune in the least amount of time as possible. But you've got to be willing to invest in your business to do that. And I think some people can just get fixated on the wrong numbers, can't they, as you just highlighted. So we always say that there's the real numbers you need to be looking at is, obviously, you're looking at your turnover and your revenue. You've got to understand your gross profit margins and make sure, they're locked in. And then understand that net profit margin. Actually, if you look at those three, it's very easy for someone like me or you to look at that in a business, and you can immediately identify where that business is going.
Quick pause for a second. If this episode's hitting home for you, do us a favor. Please give it a follow on this app. And if possible, please share it with someone that you think would also benefit. This podcast was brought to you by Tradiewebguys, where day in, day out, we work with tradies and contractors that are looking for predictable, manageable systems to close more jobs and scale with consistency. It's a proven system that's focused on closing more jobs, not just generating more leads. We have loads of case studies and reviews on the website to back this up if you want to go check it out. If you like the sound of predictable, manageable, and consistent growth, click on the link in the description or head to tradiewebguys.com.au and start the conversation. All right, back to it.
Whether and if any of those figures are out of sync, and I know, like just to give the audience a bit of a guide on the net profit margins, there's a really good book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, and he talks about in there that especially for builders, he says that if a business is running at 5% or less net profit margins, which can happen as you start to scale, he says you're literally on life support. It's literally going to take one job, just going to wipe you out. You're done potentially. Anywhere between 10 and 15% is nice and healthy for a net profit margin. Anything above 15%, he says the same thing. You're either not investing in the business and you're not growing it. But he said if you are above it and you are investing in team and systems and everything else, then it says make the most of it, because it's not going to be long before the competition catches up, because it's such a rarity for a really good business to get over 15% margins, especially for builders, unless they're knocking their pipe out and doing everything themselves. So might help a little bit.
I mean, again, I didn't have that conversation with him identifying things that were necessarily wrong, as much as it was like, well, this is an observation for where you're at, and if you're saying what you're telling me is true about where you want to get to, then these are the paradigms that you're going to have to face, and the changes that you're going to have to make in order to achieve that outcome, because that's just never going to be a reality right now.
Yeah, that's
right. Hanging on to your dollars and cents all the time is like the fastest way to grow broke.
100%. Yeah, exactly. And that is it. It's the paradigm shift, isn't it? And that's the problem that most can't get over, that shift in mindset.
So when you start working with businesses that are sort of, that $1 million mark, or, working towards that sort of startup-y kind of phase, is it often a case that they just don't have any systems in place because they haven't really had to. They don't never had to manage staff or whatever it might be.
Yeah, generally. I think when we first start working with them, one of the first things you do is get them to do a little bit of a time audit to see like what is actually going on in their day. And you can, very much like from that time audit, you'll immediately see where the problems are. So is it, that they're on the tools and that's the first thing that's got to happen. If you're going to scale a business, you've got to get off the tools as soon as possible. And sometimes that can be a phased approach, so we might be working with a business owner and say, look, actually, let's just, you're working on the tools 3 days a week. Let's just step you back 1 day a week. And in 3 months time, we want you off the tools completely. There's no way you're going to scale a business to 10 mil while you're on the tools. So you've got to make that decision at some point.
Well, can we talk about that a little bit? Because I've got some like mixed perspective on that, on that philosophy. And this is due to like experience and conversations that I've had with clients and, friends and colleagues and stuff over the years with the whole getting off the tools sort of, I call it clickbait. But I'd love to explore that more because my experience and a lot of the guys that are listening to this and watching this is, and I know because like yourself, I am also a qualified tradesperson, and I went through that whole education system in Australia where I did my apprenticeship and I did my, trade license course certifications and all that kind of stuff. And so I was a qualified plumber by trade. However, I had no idea what was involved in reading a P&L or a balance sheet. I didn't understand like any of these other business aspects. However, according to the government, I was okay to go and run a business. I sure as shit wasn't equipped to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could swing a hammer and, but I didn't know how to run a business. And so, and the conversation that we often have with builders or with clients, tradespeople, whatever, is like, what is your actual sweet spot? Like, where is your time best spent within your business? Because truth be told, if you give half these guys like a checklist of things to do, and one of them is go and reconcile your zero book, like accounting, like they're not, no one's equipped for that. And they didn't sign up for that in the beginning. Like they want to go build stuff. They want to be creative. Some of these guys that are very creative, they build these amazing things. You stick them behind a desk, they shit the bed. So, so I think there's a gambit there to run in the space of like, okay, well, what are you good at, and how do we help you stay within that sweet spot? Which, truth be told, is not always getting them off the tools. It's finding other people to do this shit that they don't want to do, so they can stay on the tools or manage guys on site or whatever it might be.
Yeah, sometimes, but the reality is that if you're going to stay on the tools, and let's just play that scenario out. So you stay on the tools, you get someone to do all your bookkeeping, you're getting someone to do your marketing, and all the other little bits and bobs. The reality is you're working on the tools, and I've done this. So and probably you have as well. You're working away, trying to do something because you love your trade, and then all of a sudden the phone rings and okay, there's a problem with Mr. and Mrs. Jones at this job, and then all of a sudden there's no materials on this site over here. And the reality is you're working, and as you're trying to scale, and you can't. You end up you're working, but you're not actually earning yourself a good day's money anyway because you've just been interrupted all day. So you get frustrated over that. You end up going home and then having to deal with all that paperwork that you couldn't actually get done because you were on site. Right. You can never take away everything from the business owner. So I think a business owner has got to decide, and there's nothing wrong with either decision. The business owner has got to decide, like you said, is there a sweet spot for me where actually I am going to stay on the tools and I am going to do my paperwork. But you need to realize that you are going to cap out at some point on your revenue. You're not going to scale a $10 million business while working on the tools.
Or in that example that you gave there, you would get a customer success manager to handle those inquiries, and you would get someone to do your books, and you could still be on the tools and do what you're good at.
Well, potentially, but then what is your role in the business? So are you actually the manager and the owner of the business that's driving that business forward? Are you making the strategic decisions? Are you out there hiring? The problem is the business owner has to wear so many hats.
True.
And he's got to be over all those different areas of the business. So when you're on the tools, it's very difficult to hire every single one of those hats and still be profitable.
Well, I'm not suggesting that you do, but what I'm suggesting is you find people that can do those things so you don't have to, people that are qualified in that.
Yeah, I agree. But at some point, let's take, for example, all those things that you got to do. So you got to do the finance, you got to do the marketing, you got to run the projects, HR, all of that. Now, if you go out and say, well, let's just find people that are really good at that stuff so I can stay on the tools, you wouldn't have a profitable business. You wouldn't make any money. Well, it's because normally when you're trying to scale up, the business owner has to take on all those roles as he's scaling to make money. The reality is, like me and you who run our own business, we're probably dealing with multiple roles in the business because we have to, because of profit. Once you get to that $10 million, you've probably got plenty of money there to have a full-blown team that's working for you. But I think it's the reality is, if you're at 2-3 million and you want to hire out all those different roles, I don't think you'd have the money to do that and stay on the tools and keep on top of it all. So I think you need to decide, are you going to be the visionary and drive it, or are you happy to just have a job and work on the tools? I think there is a difference though between, if you create a business that's working really well for you and you've got a nice big business that's got great cash flow and turnover and whatever else, and then you think to yourself, I've actually systemized this so much that actually I've got more than enough time to go and work on the tools for a day. My phone's not going to be ringing and I can actually go and do something I love. I think that's a different situation. But I think if someone was going into this thinking, I can just hire everyone else so I can stay on the tools, I don't know anyone that's built a business like that successfully.
I mean, surely the key to growing a successful business is hiring people in the right position.
Yeah. But
why would that not
when?
be hiring someone who's a qualified bookkeeper or accountant, whatever it might be, at whatever stage that is, to do the bookkeeping instead of doing
agree, 100% agree. But that you can't do that on day one,
right?
So you've got to make the transition before you can go and make that hire. So before you can go and hire a site supervisor, you need to be big enough to be able to. You need to be generating the revenue that says now I can afford to hire that site supervisor. But in the meantime, you're doing it until you get to that stage. So trying to grow to that level whilst being on the tools is hard.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I guess one thing that's been useful to me over the years, and my friend and colleague Al Levy from the 7 Power Contractor, who's been on the show loads of times, he's talked about the power of having a org chart in place and a forecasted org chart in place, by which you identify, first of all, what roles and responsibilities you, as maybe you're a one-man band and you're getting started because you're getting to that $1 million mark. As currently you're doing all of these different things, which is okay and normal, by the way, if that's you guys out there. Like Greg's saying, sure, you're going to wear all these hats because you don't have the resource to be able to, fill those gaps. However, in the forecasted org chart, you're like, you know what? Like currently I'm doing this HR hiring. I hate this stuff. Like this is what that role currently looks like from what I'm doing in it. And this is what I want to get someone in there to do eventually once we can hit this certain mark.
Yeah.
So having a bit of an understanding as to, okay, what is this role and responsibility that I can eventually hire from, to take that off my plate or someone else's plate, whatever it might be, so that you can set yourself up to scale, and replace yourself in those areas.
100%. That's exactly right. And I think where people want to start with that is sometimes the mistake that gets made is as they're scaling, they think, right, the first role I need is, let's say, site supervisor. I've got to bring a site supervisor on, but you're talking big money to go and invest and go and get yourself a site supervisor, or I need a sales manager, big money for that sort of role. Where you want to start is another great book, Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time, is actually start right on the bottom rung of that. Start on the lower stuff and think, right, well, actually, can an admin person help me so I can be a better site supervisor and I can leverage my time a bit more? And can an admin person help me do this? And so when you do start hiring, start low, and you'll find you get more capacity and you can get those mundane jobs taken off you. And then even when you do bring on those site supervisors and sales managers and things like that, before you go and hire a second site supervisor, can the first site supervisor have an admin person that gives him 50% more capacity? So I think sometimes people think about hiring the wrong way, but I think Dan Martell's got it spot on. Start high, low, and get rid of those mundane tasks.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that. And for context, what like to give you an example of like how that would actually look practically, if you've got somebody within your business, and a lot of you guys are in this scenario, first and foremost, it's really important that when you do bring people into the business, that they have a very clear understanding of what success looks like for their role. Because we've all done that thing before where we go and, we hire someone because we're desperate. We don't train them properly. We don't equip them properly. We end up firing them and blaming them because we think they're shit. But the reality is we haven't in any way equipped them for success. However, when you do bring somebody into a scenario, and this is again, like, going back to what Al, Levy sort of teaches with the forecasted org chart kind of thing. It's like, well, this is where we're currently at. This is where we want to be at. And most likely at this stage here, you're going to have an assistant that's going to help you do these things. So you no longer have to do this for your business. And we do this internally with our team as well. Like we have like account managers and we say, right, when you get to this point, you're going to have a media buyer who's going to help you with this. And then we like same sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that just means they get more capacity and they've got more, they can, and then it sort of also is moving them, when you talk about career path, it's like, it gives you the opportunity to promote them into sort of different sort of roles and responsibilities based on, those metrics. So it's quite powerful, but of course you've got to do the work.
Yeah, 100%. And so it goes back to what we said at the beginning. This is leverage, isn't it? That business owner is understanding leverage, not just for him or her, but for them, for the team. Let's leverage the team up as well. And I think that one of obviously the most powerful parts of leverage now, just going back to hiring, is we can use AI to do a lot of this. AI will build out your job roles. It will build out those ideal KPIs for you so you can, hold people accountable. And then what I love about AI is that you could potentially, all those CVs that you get in are going to be matched against your job role and your KPIs. And you think, well, how are they matching against that? When you're interviewing them, get the interview transcribed. How they getting on the interview? Is it matching the job role and the KPIs that I want to do? And then it comes back to what you said before, like rather than moaning at someone saying, right, let's get rid of them, they're not performing. How do we then do appraisals based on all of that? And you can use AI to generate those appraisals and see how they go. So I think for a business owner with AI, especially with hiring, you're really equipped to make some good decisions with that.
So what in your experience is like the first key hire for a business owner that is scaling towards the $1 million mark, or maybe they're hovering around that?
Yeah, so I think for 1 million, there's not many hires really, but the first hire is going to be your VA. Yeah, exactly. It's your VA or admin and someone to do your bookkeeping. But the danger, what can often happen at that 1 million mark, is that you go and get yourself a VA and you say to the VA, right, I want you to do all my social media outreach and marketing. I want you to do all my bookkeeping, and you're going to help me on site do all my material ordering. And you're actually, they end up useless at all of it because you've given them too much to do, and they're unique job roles in themselves, and they're not specialists in all of that. So
that's a very good point. And
yeah.
I see that all the time where people just think they could just dump everything. And I always say to them, is this something, could you do all this on your own?
Yeah.
They're like, no way. Exactly. So what, I mean, they're humans, they're people. Like, why do you think they can,
Yeah. So, and the reality is a lot of people are getting VAs maybe overseas as well. So there's, language barrier and different things like that. So that, they're expecting someone to do all that for like $15 an hour or something. And you think that, it's naive and unrealistic.
I mean, truthfully, sometimes you can, but it's just, I think it's important that like everyone understands, going back to what we were talking about before, what are the roles and the responsibilities of the task that we're trying to offload to this person? And more importantly, what does the training and support look like so they can do it right in line with how we want to do things at ABC plumbing and electrical, whatever it might be, right? So
100%. Yeah.
Like I think it's not like a one and done kind of, situation. You got to bring them on board and you got to equip them, and you got to keep them equipped, Quick pause for a second. If this episode's hitting home for you, do us a favor. Please give it a follow on this app. And if possible, please share it with someone that you think would also benefit. This podcast was brought to you by tradiewebguys, where day in, day out, we work with tradies and contractors that are looking for predictable, manageable systems to close more jobs and scale with consistency. It's a proven system that's focused on closing more jobs, not just generating more leads. We have loads of case studies and reviews on the website to back this up if you want to go check it out. If you like the sound of predictable, manageable, and growth, click on the link in the description or head to tradiewebguys.com.au and start the conversation. All right, back to it.
Yeah, without doubt. Yeah, I think the training's absolutely key. Keep training your team up and leveling them up.
Mm. And so then how does that then segue into businesses that are developing and they're sort of growing? Like what are some of the key positions or systems that you see like critical in evolving a business from 1 to 5 to 10, so on and so forth?
Yeah. So the next big hire for most is going to be that site supervisor. That's probably the main one, because I think the problem with business owners, or the biggest challenge they have, is when they're dealing with clients and they're dealing with the constant day-to-day firefighting. That's what's going to drain the time of the business owner. So you need to get rid of that. And normally that's where the site supervisor comes in. They're the client liaison person, and they're looking at the problems on site. They're doing quality control, potentially ordering materials, all that sort of stuff. So that's probably the big hire, and that will probably come in at around the $2 million mark, where you think, right, I'm ready for that site supervisor to potentially come in. It does vary depending on if you're a trades business or builder, but yeah.
And in your experience, by putting that hire into place, what does that free the owner up to focus more on?
Well, then he's in the business more to be able to build some systems and then look at, I mean, really where we want the business owner sitting is the lifeblood of the business, which is your marketing and your sales. So you've got to really make sure that you've got that pipeline locked in for 6 to 12 months if you can. So business owner needs to focus on that first, marketing and sales, and then it's about systemizing the business. So how do we get delivery right? How do we keep our quality control as we start to scale? Who are the key people that I need to bring on board? More trades, and especially in Australia, I think the trades here is probably worse than in the UK. Very, very difficult to find decent trades here, and
shortage.
Massive shortage, yeah. I mean, there's a shortage in Britain as well, but it's even worse here.
Problem.
That's right, yeah. UK's kicked a lot out as well, but they've gone home. But it's a real problem. So that they're the key things that a business owner needs to be doing, looking like how do I build that pipeline of trade so that if I do go and land this $1 million project, can I actually fulfill it?
And I guess that's an important part of the strategic design of the business for the milestones throughout the year. It's like, well, if we're going to get to this point and I'm going to be able to bring this person in to do these things, then what am I going to go and focus on as which hat am I going to put on, essentially, or which hat am I going to wear more often? Probably more likely the scenario, because you sometimes see, look, I've seen this all the time as well, where people will bring people in to a certain position and they're so emotionally attached to that position where they just micromanage the shit out of it, and they just they don't actually let the person do the role, So
and that's usually because the systems aren't in place. So no one's going to do the job as good as you. Generally, that's what you think, and it's probably right to begin with. But if you haven't got those systems in place, you can't let go because you think, well, I don't trust that they're not going to mess it up. Whereas actually, if you've got something systemized or you've got quality control checklists or whatever it is that you put in, then you can often sort of step back and think, well, if they follow the system, we should be good. Not easy.
Let's talk a little bit about systems, because I know this is obviously, we've been talking about systems on the podcast for a decade now, and the general, everyone kind of conceptually understands a system is basically a instruction on what somebody needs to do in order to fulfill any given task or workflow or whatever it might be. However, we so often have these scenarios, and truth be told, we have run into this obstacle within our own business all the time, where we're almost in system paralysis. We have so many, systems and so many checklists and so many this and so many that they never really get reviewed or updated, or even if they're being followed. So we've kind of zoomed back a little bit on this, and we've gone sort of more into well, I won't say we don't still have systems. We do have a lot of systems, but it's very much focused around, well, this is the task within a check. This is the thing to do, the checklist. It's the to do, and then this is the instruction on how to do the thing, which is the procedure. That's kind of how we run with it.
Yeah, it's difficult systems, because I'm in exactly the same boat. I've scaled a lot of businesses, and then you find the same thing. You build all these systems out, and then you think, well, actually, has anyone even looked at this document? And it takes a long time to do it. And the problem is, at the moment with us, is we're breaking our systems all the time because we're so heavily invested in AI and building new automations out that half of the stuff's redundant now, and it's not needed anymore. So it's very, very difficult to stay on top of that. I think what's going to happen very soon, and I think this is going to happen in the next year or two, is that you're just going to be working on your computer. It's going to be fully videoed, and it's going to see everything you're doing, and it will build a system at the end of the day for you. So I'll watch what you're doing, like the bookkeeper. And then you'll say, right, now watch everything I did today, turn that into a system, and it will just go bang. We followed your workflow. This is actually the optimized way of doing it.
There's a tool that does. My coach was showing me the other day. It's basically you record it, your task, and then it just goes and creates an SOP for it. I'll tell you my.
Yeah.
Oh, Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know the tool, but what I mean is, I think it's going to follow us every day, and just like without us, it's going to watch everything. So we're going to have smart glasses. It's going to be doing it from that. I think we're not far away from everything we do being tracked. Our conversations, what we're looking at, our screens, and then you won't be manually or asking the tool, can you systemize that? I think it's automatically going to do it for you.
I mean, truth be told, I kind of feel like that's just going to make the problem even worse, because now you're going to go from a scenario where you've got too many systems that no one reviews to having even more systems that probably no one ever reviews. So I'm wondering so my friend and colleague, Dave Jennings from Systemology, he wrote a book, and within that book, he identified the best way to identify
critical path, is it? Yeah.
The critical path flow.
Yeah. And
make sure. So essentially what that means, guys, you've got okay, this is, let's say we're talking about installing hot water heaters or, clearing block drains or whatever it might be, right? We've got steps within that, different stages, everything from lead conversations, client acquisition, billing, whatever it might be. And that's literally like a workflow. So this, then that, then this, and that, then this, and that in a typical order, like a flow for you guys that are listening to this. Just imagine like a series of boxes with boxes underneath it and arrows pointing towards it. And then some of those stages may very well require documentation. And so answering the phone probably doesn't require documentation. Sometimes it might if you've got a script to follow, but okay, but then if you're okay, now we need to create an invoice in ServiceMate, yes. Okay, how do you do that? Where's the recording and where does that live? And normally you'd stick that in a wiki or some sort of depository where people can actually access it. They can say, oh, this is how to do the invoicing. Sure, no problem. And so, but like you say, Greg, now we're in and this is the trap that we fell into where, we would build systems from the beginning and then they would just get updated so quickly. They just became redundant or irrelevant due to some of the things you mentioned, tools, technology advancements and all this kind of stuff. And we've got. Go on, sorry. I was going to say this. I think there's the way to keep it simple has to be some sort of form of revisiting this on some regular cadence where you can update it and you can make modifications. So on and so forth. Because in most cases, you build it once and then it never gets looked at again.
Yeah, exactly. I think what we've got to think about the future of how are people actually working. And at the moment, we're seeing updates all the time. I'm all over sort of the AI updates of what's coming. Claude has just released something unbelievable, which is called. Let me quickly click on it because they released it yesterday. Co-work, and we're entering a stage now where how do people work? What people are now doing is before they start a task, if they want to know the best way of doing a task, they're going to ask AI what's the best way of me? How do I generate an invoice on Xero? Or how do I do this bank reconciliation on Xero, whatever they want to do. And what's now going to happen is we're building these systems out and AI is going to be analyzing those documents and it's just going to be telling them exactly how to do it, or it's going to be telling them the most optimized way of how to do it based on the workflows that everyone's producing. So I personally, I don't think spending a lot of money and building out a lot of systems at the moment is probably worth doing, because I think in the next year, I think it's going to track everything. It's going to track everything you're doing and it's going to tell you the most optimized way.
So you're almost worthwhile, at this point, just doing what Dave says with the critical client flow and just having that flow chart, and then just I mean, I guess there are some things that you will have to inevitably document for sure, but maybe just they're the things that are going to be potentially updated pretty regularly with the landscape that we live in.
I think if anyone's starting on systems, you've got to work out where you're going to get the most leverage and what's going to give you the most bang for your buck at this stage. So look at those. What are those repeatable tasks? How can we optimize that? How can we systemize that? How can we use AI to speed it up? Look at those tasks and what's going to make the most money. So the danger is people can look at a task just for the sake of looking at a task, and you think, well, actually, is that all right? That's just saved us $50 a week or whatever. Look at the big movers in the business and systemize those and optimize those workflows. That's where you get your money back.
Yeah, exactly right. That's bang on. The I guess as well, now we have systems. Great. What does that mean? I suppose it's one thing having these things documented. It's another thing having like a process in place where people actually follow them.
Mm.
So what does that look like?
Well, I think I just had this week actually. New bookkeeper started. How do I do this reconciliation on your wages, and how do I assign it to the director's loan account and all this stuff? She could ask Xero to explain that to her, or she could ask the AI to, as she's doing Xero, to explain where to click. But we've got a unique process for that I needed to explain, and so we're frantically now looking for all the Loom videos and the system that I knew was in place, but we couldn't find it. It was there, but we couldn't find it. So it wasn't, it's somewhere sitting in Loom, but not documented the right way. And sometimes that's the danger of what I'm a big believer in is like you get the person doing the task to actually systemize it themselves and log it. So, rather than the business owner going down the rabbit hole of systemizing, it's, one of the biggest time sucks going. So let the bookkeeper systemize the task. But the beauty is when we did finally find that video and that document, she was then able to do that because she's a new hire and she knows exactly what she's doing now. So that's the benefit of systemizing. When you bring on new hires, it's, if it's an easy way of retrieving it, you've got an easy way of bringing new hires on and training them. And that's where it comes into its own, really, I think.
And I think inevitably you'll, like what we find anyway, is like those videos and those SOPs and stuff, they get viewed quite a lot in the early stages. And after they sort of, the muscle memory picks up and people start recalling how to do things, they become less and less viewed. And then people need them less and less.
Well, they've served their purpose. Yeah,
exactly right. It's done its job, right? So, and if you put that into context for, like a trade business, and this is one thing that we see a lot, like, okay, if you're hiring new team members, like, do you have a system around onboarding? Like, do you have something like something that the team members can follow? Day one, you're going to be doing a ride-on with Bob. Day two, you're going to be doing you're going to be working on the stock and inventory in the factory. We're going to be running you through everything lives. Day three, you're going to be doing this, blah, 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 blah. Like, just having like something in order, something in place so they can see, oh, okay, well, this is the onboarding process that I'm going to be part of, and this is the tools that I need to view, and make sure that I understand before I get to that point, and blah, blah, blah. Because then that just basically means you don't have to sit there and tell people what to do all day. Quick pause for a second. If this episode's hitting home for you, do us a favor. Please give it a follow on this app, and if possible, please share it with someone that you think would also benefit. This podcast was brought to you by tradiewebguys, where day in, day out, we work with tradies and contractors that are looking for predictable, manageable systems to close more jobs and scale with consistency. It's a proven system that's focused on closing more jobs, not just generating more leads. We have loads of case studies and reviews on the website to back this up if you want to go check it out. If you like the sound of predictable, manageable, and consistent growth, click on the link in the description or head to tradiewebguys.com.au and start the conversation. All right, back to it.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. What most people will do is they'll systemize the business, but not systemize it for the tradies. So they'll do it all for the admin and whatever else, but forget that actually the tradies, that they need their quality control documents done and their checklists of, like, before we actually sign a project off, what is the checklist that I need to work through to say, yeah, that's done. You can invoice for that now. A lot of people forget about that, and they do the back office stuff, which maybe isn't as important, to be fair.
So would it be fair to say that the difference between a $1 million trade business and a $10 million trade business is essentially the systems that drive the business behind the scenes?
It's the systems and the people. I think, a $10 million business is more leveraged, obviously, but they've got more of a machine running. So that a $10 million business would have a predictable workflow coming in. So they'd have that marketing strategy nailed. They know what's working for them. They've got leads coming in on tap. They know what their conversion rates are. They know their numbers. I think that the key difference between the two is that a $10 million business, if it's successful, will be all over their numbers. Yeah. And that's from everything from their marketing numbers, like what's giving them the biggest ROI, to like what's actually happening on site, what phases are delivering us the most profit on our projects, like why we was making money on our concreting, but we're always losing on our joinery packages. That's the difference between a really successful $10 million business and maybe someone who's sort of winging it at a mill.
It's funny, we have so many of these conversations with businesses, like when they come in and the first one is like helping them identify, as we mentioned earlier, the fact that if they want to leverage, this model to scale, then they need to allocate, make sure they have funds available built into their costing, right? So that they haven't got to have the money saved, they've got to allocate for it to keep fueling the engine, so on and so forth. But very often that conversation stems from, messy data. And so you look at like Zero files or whatever it might be, and it's just an absolute mess, right? And so, and this is one of a very common conversation that we have to have with people in the space of like, there's a very strong possibility that you're going to have to update your financial team. You might need a new bookkeeper. You might need a bookkeeper. If you haven't got one, that's a good idea. Yeah. You might need a new accountant. You might need a financial advisor. You might need a number of these different, stakeholders to help you actually get clear on the data. Because like you say, if the difference between a $1 million business and a $10 million business is typically the fact that they have a lot of clarity around their numbers, then that's got to be a line in the sand for you. You should be excited when you look at those P&Ls at the end of the month, and that should give you a lot of direction in line with whatever your strategy is.
Yeah, 100%. I would say the number one problem with the first thing we do, same as you, is when we take on a client, is like we're looking at your numbers. I would say 60 to 70% cannot get their numbers like that. They're like, the accountant's not up to date. We only do it every quarter, or I don't know how to use Zero, and so you're trying to educate them on, well, like how do you not? How can we not pull a P&L out of Zero? But it's so common. It's not something they're thinking about. And I think the problem with a lot of builders as well is that they can have millions running through their hands, hundreds of thousands coming like invoicing, but that they're not some of the time they're not capturing what they should be of that. And it's crazy, but because they're constantly, money's coming in all the time and then it's going out, and because the flow's there, they don't actually stop to think about it until sometimes it's a little bit too late. And then all of a sudden they got a huge ATO bill and they're thinking, well, now I really need to look at my numbers, because what's going on? How have I just delivered a $1 million project and I've got nothing to show for it at the end?
Sure.
And yeah, that's often, sometimes it's that point where they really kick in and think, right, let me get on top of this now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big responsibility for builders, because like they're inevitably in charge of the payment, for subcontractors and whatever it might be. Like it's a big responsibility, and very often like those things don't come from going through trade and learning how to swing a hammer. So.
And that's it. And just to simplify numbers for builders, because sometimes if we're not great at numbers or we're not good at maths or whatever, sometimes it's it can be a bit overwhelming. But there's just like the main numbers. All you need to know every month is, what is my revenue? Like, what am I invoicing, or know what that invoice target is? Like, what should I be generating every single month? If you know that, and you know what that number is like for you to break even, then you've got a nice target to hit every month. Then you've got to know your gross profit margins on every job. Just get it overall on every job. Like, what am I making? 30%, 40%, whatever it necessarily is. And then what am I, what's the net profit after I've paid everything out? Just those three numbers. If you can just get that alone, and you have that every month, you'll be ahead of a lot of other builders. It'll just give you, it just takes the blindfold off, and it can help you make informed decisions when you have those three numbers.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those things where I think when people get into business and if you don't come from a financial background, which truth be told, most trade business owners do not, like it's very daunting. Like I fell into that trap for years, they're just not wanting to confront the numbers that I'm seeing in front of me in my Zero, not A, understanding them, being able to read them properly, and then B, not really they're just terrifying me and, just totally freaking me out.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that like you guys, you can't bury your head in the sand with those things. Like the sooner you learn it, the better. And it doesn't have to be complicated. One of the reasons why I'm just so adamant around the whole profit first financial model is because I think it's just like finance for dummies. It's just so easy to make sure that you always have allocations within your business. And I know a lot of people, diss profit first, but like from someone that, most of the people that diss it sort of have a financial background, and they've already got their models. Whereas I think it like from the perspective of a lot of trade businesses, I think it just couldn't be easier.
Yeah, we've explored profit first quite a bit, and it works for some and not for others. But I think what I do take out of profit first, I think everyone should, is just have those buckets, have those wallets or bank accounts put away, and put that amount in every single month. If you don't follow the whole thing of profit first, at least follow that. Just make sure that money is being allocated every month into, get your GST put away, get your tax put away.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, truth be told, like that's pretty much, after someone that's been using it now for 6-7 years, like that's all that I really do with it. I just make sure the allocations are done every week. Yeah. Because that fuels everything. And I don't really follow like all the other stuff in the book where it's like, give yourself a holiday, and I think as well, the name is kind of misleading. I think I get it. Like, it sells books, right? Profit first is much more attractive than make sure you have money in all areas of your business. But like, I think realistically, I've said this to, Mike before, when I had dinner with him, I'm like, I think the name is a little bit misleading and some people don't really fully understand it. I mean, you get that argument, I don't think profit should be first. Like, I'm in a growth stage and I should be investing in marketing. I'm like, that's not what it means.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It depends what model you're running as a business, but some builders out there, depending who you're working for, sometimes they're not getting paid for 30 to 60 days. Sure. Got invoices out, and then sometimes the model is tough. It's a tough model to follow when you're waiting on a lot of money and stuff. But the principles behind it, it works. Yeah, get that money away before you draw it out and start spending it.
So if there are business owners out there listening to this, coming in the sort of the beginning of 2026 now as we record this, and they're ready to make some significant changes. Maybe they're 1 million, 2 million. They do like the idea of scale. They don't really know sort of what the first step would be. What would you be saying to those guys if they want to become a $5 million business over the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is map out a bit of a plan for yourself. So actually work out, and you can use AI to help you do this, but actually think about where you want to be in 5 years and why you want to be there. Because we don't want to grow just for growth's sake. All of this is being built around lifestyle and giving you a better life. Now, I was obsessed when I was in the UK. I grew a reasonable sized building company, and I was just obsessed with growth just because I wanted to grow, and I had my identity tied around that. And it was the worst mistake I ever made. I thought, like, what am I doing this for? It was horrible. And now it's much more of, I do like growth. I love growth, but it's more about a lifestyle business for me. I'm trying to maximize my time and earn as much money as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. So slightly different way of coming at it. But as a builder, actually think about what do you want? Like, don't say I want to be 10 million just because you think that's what you've got to do. Like, what lifestyle do you want? And then how do you feed that lifestyle? So map that out. Map out the figures that lead to that, and then drill that down into a yearly target and then your quarterly targets. That's sort of stage one. And then I would just say that the other trap that people get into is when they're thinking about scaling, if they do want to get to 10 mil, think about job value over job volume. So rather than thinking, as a builder, rather than doing, 20 projects at 50 projects at 200K to get to 10 mil. What about doing 5 projects a year, that gets you to, 10 mil? So $5 million, it's $2 million projects. So then if you are going to do that and you're going to go for value over volume, you then need to look at your marketing and look at your brand and think, do I look like a company that is a $2 million company or that like can deliver $2 million jobs, or am I looking like a company that's only doing 200K jobs? So look at that side, your attraction piece, and then, as we said, like in detail on this, start looking at your systems and your team, and have you got the capacity to do it? So money, marketing, systems.
So respectful of the fact that a lot of these things are foreign to, I suppose, a lot of the listeners and viewers out there for better or worse, whatever reason it is. I mean, obviously, if you're listening or watching this podcast, then you're obviously taking a proactive approach in getting more information about this thing. But Greg, if people did want help with this, where's the best place for them to get in contact with you so they can maybe get some help?
Yeah, so I've got a free book that people can download on my website. So it's developcoaching.com.au, or you can buy it on Amazon. It's called Building Your Future. So that was a number 1 bestseller in the UK. So have a look at that. That's pretty useful. So you get that. That's just a resource. I actually had a builder tell me the other day that he doubled his business just from the book, which was awesome. So might be the best $20 you've ever spent. or just if you want to talk to us, and feel free to do that from the website. Follow us on YouTube. We've got our own podcast, which I think you're going to come on, Matt, very soon.
Right.
That's it.
So you guys that are watching this or listening, I'm going to have all the links over there to Greg's contact details in the show notes for this page. So head across to the siteshed.com, search develop coaching, and this episode will inevitably show up with all of the links and everything within that. I do encourage you guys to check this out, because everything that Greg is talking about is like literally scale 101. And if you guys are in that space where maybe your wheels have been churning, around that, $1 million mark for a while now, or the chances are there's just some little micro changes that can make such a big difference to the business, and can really give you that foot up that you're potentially looking for. And so, I really encourage you guys to take that next step, because no one else is going for you. So get out there and do it. Greg, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate that. It's amazing. Like when I have these conversations with, different people from all over the world, there are some parallels there. Like there's so many commonalities, they say success leaves clues. And, the fact that we keep revisiting so many of these concepts is probably a testament to the fact that it does work, provided that you do the work. Yeah. So, mate, keep up the good work. It's awesome. Like, I know it's such a valuable insight for people to have support, in this space when it's not familiar to them. So thank you for that. Otherwise, mate, I think we've wrapped this one up. So again, notes and everything will be in the show notes. Contact details will be in the show notes. If you guys have any questions about anything, if you would like me to try and rubber arm Greg back on the show to expand on any of the concepts that we've discussed, I'm sure we could do that. But otherwise, Greg, thank you very much, sir. And that is a wrap. Hey guys and girls, how would you like all of the value adds left behind from our podcast guest all put together in the one spot? We've pulled every tool together, every template, every resource shared on the show, and we've packed them all into the Tradie Academy. It's free to join, and it's built by the team behind the SiteShed and TradieWebguys. Inside, you'll get marketing tips, business tools, and first access to future resources, all in one simple dashboard. Just head across to tradie.wiki/pod. That's tradie.wiki/pod. The link's in the episode description. And once again, you just log in once and then you're all set. And if you want to get notified of upcoming episodes, hit subscribe or follow.